It is that time of day again when I do this video and talk with you about stuff. In this particular video, I'm going to talk with you about what Bitcoin and alts are going to do because of a word that starts with SCAR or scare, SCAR, dot, dot, dot. Is it going to scare you? Is it going to scar you? Is it scarce? Are we talking about scarcity? Well, depending on who you are, the answer is any of the above. Okay? At least one of the above. Because for everybody, no matter who you are, it is scarce. Even if you have a big old pile of it, it is scarce. That's the whole point of assets like Bitcoin. Now, there are plenty of cryptos that are not scarce. Right? Technically, Ethereum is not scarce. It does not have a max supply cap. Right? So that's not scarce. But Bitcoin is, Litecoin is, plenty of good decentralized cryptos are. They have a limited supply, right? Solana doesn't really have a limited supply. Right? They burn a bunch, they make a bunch, they burn a bunch more, they make a bunch more on a regular base and on regular habit. They do it. See, that's one of the things that Bitcoin has demonstrated is that you don't need to make these ridiculous models where you're burning a bunch of tokens. It's just such an idiotic thing to do. But people do it because they believe that it gives the holders a perception that all of a sudden their token is more valuable. Well, if your token needs to be burned in large quantities to demonstrate that it has value, then it means it didn't have value in the first place. And you're just demonstrating that by burning a bunch of it. I don't know if you guys remember, I think it was XLM at the time. Yeah, Stellar Lumis, whatever it's called, Stellar. They had a point in their history, pretty sure it was them, almost entirely sure. It's just been so many. It's been a bunch of years. A lot of things happen in crypto every day. But they made a big PR show of burning a huge chunk of their coins. Somehow that they thought that would increase investor and holder interest in their shitcoin. And, if you don't know what Stellar is, it's basically like similar to XRP. It wants to be a token used by large computer, tech companies and banks and those kind of things. So, and once upon a time, they had this kind of big PR push, relatively, for their tiny project at the time, that they had agreements in place with IBM and God knows whoever else to be like the next token. But like all things in crypto, it was a lot of noise signifying nothing. Not like all things, but like most things in crypto, there's a lot of noise signifying nothing. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the crypto projects that are out there, they really are just a cash grab, okay? And you got to be honest about that. Even if you love crypto, like I think crypto is fantastic and wonderful for many things, okay? I think it's really useful for many, many things. I know people say it's not, but I personally have used it for many, many things. So it is useful, and I can tell you that. And people say, oh, nobody's going to wait around for a Bitcoin transaction. First of all, people do wait around for Bitcoin transactions. Right? Second of all, Bitcoin is more useful than just a store of value. Third of all, there's plenty of things I can buy with Bitcoin because there's plenty of people that will accept Bitcoin. Not everyone will necessarily accept USDT or USDC or even Cardano or whatever. They might accept Litecoin. If they accept Bitcoin, there's a good chance they'll accept Litecoin because why not? Right? But if they accept any crypto, they're definitely going to accept Bitcoin. Okay. Now they might swap it instantly into some stable coin of their choice if they want. in which case they'll normally accept a stable coin if they want, but if for some reason they want a stable coin. But pretty much you can buy a lot of things with Bitcoin. And people saying, well, nobody does transactions that require thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars on a regular basis. First of all, there's plenty of people that do that. Yes, it's not the average person, but there's still plenty. Second of all, there's plenty of transactions that you can use Bitcoin for that are not thousands of dollars. You can send a $20 payment with Bitcoin and it won't cost you very much. You can send a $100 payment with Bitcoin and it won't cost you very much. You can send, pay a few $100 in Bitcoin and the transaction fee again won't cost you very much. And yes, there are people who send massively huge amounts of money also with Bitcoin, and they love it because, hey, try sending $1 billion through your bank and see how much it costs you there. It's going to cost you literally millions of dollars, right? It's going to take 5 days, 2 weeks, maybe a month or two. Depends on the SWIFT transaction. Depends on the clearinghouse, details, how fast they allow the transaction to go through SWIFT, etc. Depends on a lot of factors, a lot of middlemen between you and the recipient on the other end when you're going through traditional banks and banking systems. A lot, right? Even if you're moving your money from your account to another account in the same bank, if you move more than like $10,000 worth, red flag, inspection, this and that, it's going to be a big hullabaloo, right? Nothing is simple with traditional banking. There's really nothing is simple, especially when you're dealing with any quote unquote large amount, like literally anything $10,000 or more is considered it's considered a large amount. Which, okay, yes, for the average person, that's a lot of money to send at once. But there's plenty of people and businesses that are sending 10 grand all the time or more, right? Like if you buy and sell cars all the time, believe me, you're moving more than $10,000 units on a regular basis, right? Depending on what cars you sell, obviously. But like you buy and sell luxury cars, or even not so luxury, just higher middle tier cars, you're going to be sending a lot of big. Anyway, the point is, folks, Bitcoin is scarce. Litecoin is scarce. The assets that have scarcity and that are good decentralized currencies have shown they don't need to have burning events. Okay? They're not like Ethereum, the garbage coin that it is. It has to burn a bunch of Ethereum ones. They're not like XRP that had to burn, I don't even know how many XRPs back in the day for whatever reasons. Right? It's not like other shit coins that have to burn a whole bunch, or meme coins that are burning a bunch all the time. Ask yourself this, like why would you if you make a project, why would you make a project with an unnecessary amount of tokens that you then need to proceed to burn? Why wouldn't you just decide, okay, we're going to have 21 million or 100 million or 20 gazillion tokens, and we're going to expect that whatever amount of tokens we have, our target value for these things is going to differ from the actual value over time, because target values are never going to be exactly what the market is going to be on. And whatever the price is, the price is. We're going to build our model based on this concept, and we're going to lowball it so that whatever happens above and beyond that is great. But we're going to lowball it. We're going to keep our value as close to zero as possible. Our estimated value. We're going to keep it as close to zero as possible. And we're going to keep adding value, building value, building value, building value, so that if people perceive it to have a higher value than zero, bankers, we're bankers. We're doing great, right? We're banking big profits, right? By holding a bunch of this stuff, right? But no, people make stupid tokens without thinking about anything to do with the tokenomics, as they call it, or just the economics. Just what is tokenomics? The economics of the token. Just call it economics. Okay, so they don't think about the economics. They don't think about the macro picture. They certainly don't think about the micro picture of the details. And they just think, we can always raise value of this thing. We always pump it once in a while by burning a bunch of tokens. That is just dumb. I mean, if you do that, you're screaming, oh, we don't expect to be around for a long time. We expect to be around for maybe 6 months, a year, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll probably fade away into nothingness. Think about it. Why doesn't Bitcoin have that kind of an event? Why is the max supply cap 21 million? And there's nobody who runs Bitcoin centrally. There's no official burnings of Bitcoin because there's no need. They don't have to artificially pump it. All these other projects that have teams, now it's 2025, so people expect that your team will be doxxed and all that stuff. But think about it. 90% of the doxxed teams, more than 90% of the doxxed teams, end up rugging their audiences anyway. What's the one team that doesn't dox its user, its founder? Bitcoin. The one team that did not dox its creator. Bitcoin, right? Yes, there are other coins made by anonymous people, but you probably never heard of them. I've made a bunch of coins that are anonymous, that most of them are experiments that don't even exist anymore, but they were experiments and I made them anonymously. You wouldn't even know which ones they are. They were among the many anonymous made coins. But the one that you actually heard of, that was made by some anonymous person, right? That we don't know exactly who it is. There's a lot of ideas, there's a lot of suggestions. There's no 100% guarantee we absolutely know that it's this person. No doubt about it. Here's the proof, right? Like, here's the proof that can't be denied. It doesn't exist. Yes, we know it was somebody who goes by, or an organization, or a group of people, or an AI from the future that goes by the name Satoshi Nakamoto. But we don't actually know with 100% certainty who that is, right? So think about that. The one project, one out of all the literally millions of tokens that exist, the millions of crypto coins that exist, one of them is made by an anonymous founder. And it's the one that doesn't have burns. No, there are others that don't have burns. Like I said, Litecoin doesn't have burns. And they don't burn a bunch of good projects, right? They don't burn them. But even Litecoin, we know who the creator is, right? Charlie Lee. Bitcoin, we don't know. It's the one that has an incredibly scarce amount of supply. Right? Litecoin only has 4 times as much, so it's also incredibly scarce. But Bitcoin has only 21 million max supply cap, and most of it's already mined and held by whales that are never going to get rid of it, or very, very little. And it's the one that has obviously the most perceived value at the moment, and it doesn't stack up 8 million features compared to a lot of other tokens, right? It doesn't have like fastest transactions and the most apps and the most app usage and the most app downloads and the most on-chain whatever, right? It doesn't have that at all, right? It's a very chill network. Sometimes it gets really busy, like when they launch new projects like Ordinals or Runes. When those things came out, it caused the transaction fees to spike quite a bit, right? I remember back in 2017, there was also around the time, like in December 2017, transactions started taking longer and longer. Sometimes it could take up to an hour or even 2 or a day to do a transaction, because of prices were shooting through the roof then, relatively, going up to the 20K high of the time. And there was obviously a lot less hash power running the network then than there is now. So, there was a lot more latency between transactions at times. Also, just because the network was just filled with requests. Price has gone up more than 5 times as much since then, and is currently still more than 4 times higher. Right, and is approaching 5 times again. And yet the network runs still basically perfectly fine. It hasn't greatly slowed down, and it's not because there's been a huge amount of traffic offloaded to layer 2 solutions like Lightning Network, right? No, it's not. It still operates the vast overwhelming majority, even though you got wrapped Ether and wrapped Bitcoin and all this other kind of stuff, right, that are in theory, right, allowing for Bitcoin transactions not on the Bitcoin network, right, like as a side thing. So in theory, they're allowing Bitcoin transactions off of the Bitcoin chain, and technically, yes, it still gets recorded onto the Bitcoin chain in some capacity, or some event gets recorded occasionally on the Bitcoin chain to keep it, obviously, to keep the necessaries of what is happening on the chain recorded there. That still happens, but there's a lot of off-chain stuff you can do with your Bitcoin. But that's not what's causing the computers to be able to still operate as quickly. And that's not going to cause Bitcoin or crypto to do what it will do to you, whether you're scared, whether you're scarred, or whether it's scarce, right? Because in either of those cases, whether you're scared or scarred, scared is you fear what's going to happen. Scarred is something bad's already happened, and now you're surviving it. And scarce is, well, they're all scarce. The ones that have limited supply. When you appreciate the value of a limited supply asset, now, again, it doesn't mean I'm against all unlimited supply assets. I understand the concept of why, even though it's a terrible system, it's proven to be a terrible system. I still understand the system, the concept of why systems have been running on unlimited supply, right? I get why. It's logical. Population increases all the time, and people want more stuff. Therefore, you got to have more money available for more people to have more stuff. It makes perfect sense. Okay, what happens if eventually there's no more Bitcoin because they're all inaccessible? You don't think it can happen? It can absolutely happen. What if eventually, sequentially or randomly, the keys get lost to the point where there's not 16 million coins available? Because remember, like 5 million coins are gone forever. Nobody knows how to access them. That's a lot of, it's like more than 20% of the supply. It's like 25% of the supply is gone forever, practically, right? Well, or 24% or whatever. Like that's almost a quarter of all the coins ever. They're gone. Well, what happens if you lose another quarter and you only have 50% of the coins ever available? So out of 21 million, there might eventually only be like 10.5 million. Well, a lot less people are going to think it's interesting. Why? Well, because people keep losing it, and they're not making it anymore. So what's the point of getting any if eventually they're just going to run out? It's just a perception thing. It doesn't matter that there's 100 million Satoshis per Bitcoin. It does not matter. It's a perception thing. It was created with 21 million, but there's only 10.5 million left. Right now, there's only 15 million, 16 million left. Right out of the original 21 million. So it's a big perception thing. You understand, like, what happens? What happens if it gets to? There's only 5 million Bitcoin left. You really think people still want to use it when there's only 5 million left? That's a real threat to Bitcoin. Okay, it can still exist, but most people will be like, "Yeah, dude, 75% of them are gone." I understand they're considered valuable, but at that point, they're more like collector's items than actual commodities or currencies, right? When you only have a quarter of your stash left for the entire world, it's not really a currency anymore. It's a collector's item. Like what happens in the case where you have some shitcoin that all of a sudden it's not just worth um, what people perceive it to be worth as a collector's item, but now let's say what happens when there's not even a quarter of the stash left. There's like maybe 5-10% of the stash left because it got hacked or something on a different coin, right? Like, okay, you're gonna tell me, oh, Bitcoin's never been hacked. Okay, great. Some different coin. What happens if? By the way, Bitcoin has had more than a few fails. If you don't know about them, I highly recommend you learn. There have been at least 3 or 4 or 5 incidents with Bitcoin which severely threatened its existence. If you don't know what they are, you really, really, really should learn. One of them was the infinite print button, which technically happened more than once, but in different ways. And in both cases, disaster was avoided by the luck of the Bitcoin network. Like, seriously. The absolute luck of the Bitcoin network is what saved it. So, let's say you have a shitcoin, like a real shitcoin. And your shitcoin goes from whatever. You got 100 billion tokens available. And you're burning them and you're burning them and you're trying to pump value into this stupid thing. And you're wondering yourself, why did I make a stupid token with 100 billion tokens? You got to ask yourself that because it's a legit question. Why would anybody make a stupid token with 100 billion tokens? Now, you might have a perfectly good reason for it. Like, well, I want everybody on Earth to be able to have at least 10 at the current world population. Maybe I'll make a trillion tokens. You know what I'll make? I'll make a quintillion token, or I'll make 8 quintillion tokens so that every person can have 1,000 of these things at the current human population rate, roughly, whatever. They can have more than, whatever, you do the math, okay? And then you realize, nobody's buying this thing because I haven't actually delivered anything that I said I would. Unlike Bitcoin, which delivered on day one what it said it could. What is Bitcoin? It's an electronic peer-to-peer cash network. Right? Right? That's what it is. It's an electronic peer-to-peer or a peer-to-peer electronic cash network. That is what it is. It secures itself. Yes, it's a network that secures itself. So it's like its own Brinks trucks. And it's the currency itself that it is securing. Right? So it's a network of cash and a network that secures its cash. Pretty brilliant, pretty simple, pretty efficacious. It does what it says. In that sense, it's beautiful, right? It does what it says. Now, what about your token? Your token that you invented. It's going to save the world. It's going to change the world. It's going to make everything so much better. It's going to fix all the problems. What does it do? Is yours a reliable electronic peer-to-peer electronic cash network that secures itself and is its own currency? Yeah, does it promise other things that it hasn't done yet? Does it? Because if you do, then you're already not as good as Bitcoin. Did Bitcoin ever promise you ordinals? No, it never promised you ordinals. Are there ordinals on Bitcoin? Yeah, there are ordinals on Bitcoin. Did it ever promise you runes? Nope. Nobody ever promised you runes on Bitcoin. But one day, there were runes because there was a developer that decided, you know what, I'm going to make these things. I'm going to call them runes, which are ordinals are like a non-fungible token on the Bitcoin network. Okay, similar in concept. They're inscriptions on the network. They're non-fungible, meaning you can't just go into a market and instantly sell your ordinal. You have to have a buyer on the other side who actually wants that thing, as opposed to Bitcoin, which is totally fungible because you can go in any market that buys and sell Bitcoins, and your Bitcoin is equivalent to any other Bitcoin in essence on the market. Now there are some collectors who will be like, well, my Bitcoin is fancier than yours because it has a lower block height number and all this other stuff, right? This one was mined by Satoshi, or this one was in the HAL transaction, the first HAL transaction. This one was used in the Bitcoin pizza trend, or whatever. So there are people who get all weird about that, or not weird. They're collectors, right? They perceive a value in the rarity of their Bitcoins and Satoshis. And lots of people ascribe those values to the ordinals that they buy and sell and trade, right? That's very common. In fact, if you go to most ordinal sites, will show you the traits of the ordinal, and they will tell you which ordinal mint number is it, how low was it, the closer to zero, the better. They will tell you, is it inscribed on a Satoshi that was mined by Satoshi? Is it inscribed on a Satoshi that was in the HAL transaction, et cetera, et cetera? Is it on block 7? Is it on, pizza transaction? All these different things. They'll tell you all about the ordinal, that you have based on the information known about the Satoshi that it's inscribed on. Okay, so you got that, but like nobody ever promised you that this stuff would exist. It just one day a developer decided to make it, and then now there's a whole market for it. So again, Bitcoin is fungible, just like any cash or currency is fungible, meaning you can trade it easily, you can buy and sell it easily. Never mind the fact that it has its own unique serial number. There's always going to be a buyer and seller for that currency on the market. So you don't have to wait hours or days to sell your currency to get, a market value for it. So if you have one Bitcoin and the market value is currently $88,000, you can go to a Bitcoin exchange and you can instantly get $88,000 for it, right? Whereas if you go and try to sell your ordinal, you don't know how much it's going to actually sell for, right? You might have a target, you might have a rough idea if there happens to be a lot of action on that type of ordinal, and you can get a rough idea of what the sales price is. But if there's not a lot of sales happening with that collection of ordinals, or with that ordinal in particular, right? If you make an extremely unique ordinal, there's only one of them, and people just buy it and sell it to wash trade, or just because they want to collect it, like the blue diamond or something, right? The world's largest diamond, the cursed diamond, as they call it, because everyone that ever bought it apparently died shortly after they bought it, or in some unpleasant way, or whatever. It has a lot of legends about the blue diamond, not nice ones. So the point is, right, Bitcoin's fungible, like your dollars are fungible. Ordinals are not, but runes are, right? Runes are actually fungible. Right? They're like another layer of currency on top of a currency level. So it's like dollars on top of dollars. Now people might joke around and say runes are silly, whatever. They're not scarce. They're ridiculous. They're the meme coins of Bitcoin. Okay, you can argue that. It's a very good point, perfectly fair, valid point. But nobody ever promised you runes when you were entering the Bitcoin space, like if you were at the beginning, right? Nobody ever told you, oh, there's going to be runes one day. No, just one one day a developer made them, right? And that's what adds value to Bitcoin. Is over time people just keep stacking value on top of it. And more importantly than the things that add on top of it is the things that it already does from the beginning. It's a reliable peer-to-peer electronic cash network that secures itself and is the currency, right? And it has all these other wonderful things. It's divisible, portable, scalable, all these kind of things. Anyway. All right, guys, I got to get going. So see you in the line. They start at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Go to alphatradinghq.com/discord. And you can learn all about wonderful things like crypto and trading, all that for free. See ya. Happy trading. Cheers.